Welcome to the Ripples podcast. This is episode 14. I am Tim MacDonald, and I am joined, of course, by the wonderful Michael and Greg.
Hello.
How are you doing
Tim.
today?
Hey, Tim, how's things?
Really, really good. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for asking me to be on.
That's all right. Thank you for taking the time out of what I can only imagine is a very busy day for you.
Always. I mean, I like to pretend that I'm busy, if I'm not.
That's right. And if your bosses are listening, that's definitely what we're going to say. We've got a little special extraneous guest over my shoulder. You may think there he is. You may think it's my little angel devil buddy because we look so much alike, but that is my son who decided he didn't want to go to vacation care today, so he's just chilling with me.
Dude, he's big. I feel like I haven't seen him for ages. He's a big kid now.
He's shot up. Like every now and then I look at him and I'm like, he's a full on his own person now, which is crazy. He just turned 6 a few weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah, you just wish they'd stop growing sometimes. It's just like,
Yeah.
could you just stop?
Yeah. Hey, don't be distracting. All right, so Tim, we have you here because you are probably one of the great Australian success stories in the Laravel community. Which, although this podcast is not specific to the Laravel community, we do feature a lot of people from that community because that is where we spend most of our time. And we spoke to Jess a few episodes ago, Jess Archer, who kind of announced offhandedly that she's now engineering team lead at Laravel of the team that you are on. And so, we thought we'd get a bit of your perspective on that. But we also had Samuel Levy on last episode, and he sort of spoke about when you kind of transitioned away from doing freelance and handballed your clients to him. So there's a bit of connectivity within the Laravel community, especially within the Australian space. So I thought maybe we would go back, I guess, to before your time at Laravel, and talk a bit about your journey as a developer, as how you found your way into Laravel, and kind of go from there.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds great. Keen. This sounds really fun. Yeah, I mean, there's heaps to dive into there. I guess starting with getting into development, I mean, I still remember I feel like it was the moment it clicked for me. I was doing a uni degree, and I was just throwing myself into different uni degrees to try and work out what it is I even cared about. What was I passionate? I knew the things I liked doing, but what did I want to really upskill on? I remember I was writing some C++ or something, and I'm I don't know what I'm doing. And then all of a sudden this code ran and the output was some silly scissor paper rock game or something. And I was I just created something from nothing, and it just blew my mind. And I just it just clicked for my brain. Do you guys remember when something just clicked like that for you when it came to programming? Was there a moment for you when it was this is something I could sink my teeth into really deep?
Yeah. I when I was a kid, we had, I don't even know if it still exists anymore, but there was a magazine you could subscribe to. It was a kids' science magazine that was run by the CSIRO. I think it was Double Helix or something. And the back 3 pages of it were QBasic programs that you could just sort of type out. This was well before magazines were distributing things on CDs, and I guess half the audience probably doesn't even remember that. But yeah, there's definitely this sort of feeling of being endowed with some mystic power when you can make a computer do a thing. I mean, even if you're just copying stuff off Stack Overflow or whatever, there's this massive adrenaline surge when you're oh my god, I've just I've made something that and I didn't have to buy materials or learn complex skills or anything. I can just type into a computer that I already have, and it will do what I tell it to do. So yeah, definitely resonates.
I love that. Yeah, the magic powers for sure. You do feel like a wizard sometimes, when you're creating something from nothing. It's very cool. What about you, Michael?
So I did work experience in like an IT department in high school not for my high school, but I went to another one that like I knew the head of IT there through friends of the family, and I went there and kind of in between doing IT department stuff, like going to get a dodgy printer or going to do whatever else. The head of IT was like, "Here is some Visual Basic," and he set me up with Visual Basic, and he set me up with some textbooks and some stuff, and he was like, build this thing. And that was the first time really that I had done any programming, and whilst I like, it didn't click for me immediately. It was like, oh, I can like put these things together and make something happen. And I didn't really do any programming after that, probably 2 or 3 months with Visual Basic after that, but I'd always had like a passing interest in PHP, but never enough to have any idea of what I would do with it in high school. And it was not until I left high school and I bailed out of uni after a semester and I was working for an internet provider, like a startup provider, where we needed to build like a provisioning system for managing signups and putting all of that process in, that I woke up one Saturday morning and I just sat down in front of the computer and I started building this thing, which ended up being like our provisioning system. And it was like at that moment that I'm like, I can take all of this like manual work that I have to do and put it onto a web page on the computer and just automate a lot of it. And that was kind of the moment really that triggered that, that switch in my brain to go, yeah, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I never got into, because were you both saying you were doing basic? Is it Q basic? I never did basic sort of things, so was that...
Yeah, so I mean, I was back in DOS days.
Okay.
When I first started, I did do a bit of Visual Basic when I kind of got a white collar job, and similar to Michael was. I was playing around with Visual Basic for applications, which is sort of a very trimmed down version of Visual Basic that exists or existed. I'm not quite sure. It's been a while since it's been in the Microsoft space, but it was part of the Office suite, so it allowed you to like take spreadsheets and do even more. I mean, there's some crazy stuff people do with spreadsheets with just formulas, but there's like a programming language that sort of sits behind it that allows you to take that another step further. And being, even if you don't, well, at the time I didn't have like any great skill, but sort of just being aware that you could even do these things was like a big setup for me in my career, because it's, as soon as somebody ran into a ceiling of what was sort of possible with formulas or basic access databases or whatever, and they didn't really even have the knowledge that there was a deeper level that you could go to. So kind of made me the guy who was like, can you work this thing out? And then start building sort of business scripts inside of spreadsheets, and hopefully none of those are still running. somebody at a bank that I once worked at is probably banging their head up against some things that I wrote 20 years ago. No doubt.
Amazing.
It wouldn't surprise me. Like spreadsheets that kind of get ingrained into the business are very difficult.
Pain in my life.
Like they're... Because it's like, it's just easy for some department in the business to like not trouble IT because, or, the engineering team, because there's like, we've got to do something and it starts as an internal thing. And before you know it, like that team puts it in the hands of a salesperson, and a salesperson goes, look at this amazing thing that we can do. And no one ever stops to think at that point, like, how do we actually sell this? Like, how do we, and before you know it, like it's such an integral part of the business, a load-bearing wall in the business, right? And so, sales have sold it, and then product is like, oh, they're selling this thing, we've got to, get it into the product, and then poor engineering team, like 6 months down the road of this thing, is like, all right, now we've got to make it part of our platform. It's like, it's not as easy to, just go in there and do whatever you want with it anymore. And I did see an article the other day talking about like never using spreadsheets, because it always starts with the best intentions that, it's going to be a short-term thing. We're going to use it to get over a hump or something. And then, yeah, as Greg says, it becomes a load-bearing wall and it's like there forever. So I'll see if I can dig that article up again and put it in the show notes for people to have a read of. I sent it to Adam Weiland because he's like a massive spreadsheet person. He's still, despite all that he's accomplished in his career, firmly believes that like spreadsheets are the ultimate programming tool. And yeah, he had a good chuckle over it.
There's that I can't remember the exact quote, but there is that quote that every piece of software of sufficient complexity eventually becomes able to send emails. I think the same is true of spreadsheet. Every program of sufficient complexity eventually becomes Microsoft Excel.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
A very similar vibe as well of like, I think about like putting a proof of concept, like deploying a proof of concept somewhere. As soon as it's like out there in the world, it's like, cool, it's no longer a proof of concept. Like this thing is the foundation now of how we're moving forward. You're not going to get to like restart and like pull it all out and do it again like you wanted to.
And there's this interesting tension there. I mean, I'm not. As much as I prefer, people would not put business logic in spreadsheets. I know that that's kind of where my career started, and if people can kind of self-serve and do things, but who am I to tell them not to? But there's this interesting tension with proofs of concept where, I mean, I'm like a small change iteration guy, right? So I want the simplest thing that could possibly work in the hands of customers as soon as possible, no matter whether it's finished or is anything like the thing that I ultimately want customers to use. I want the feedback. But you're right, once it's out there, changing it becomes like it's probably easy to change from a coding point of view. That's probably very easy to change, but there's this sort of customer expectation that once they've got it, it's final, and you're not allowed to change it anymore. So you've got to kind of support all of your bad hacky decisions until like the end of time.
yeah, for real.
So coming into it, you unlock this superpower of programming through C++ in university. Are you like me? Did you abort your university degree, or did you see it through?
I did not see it through to the end. So I was like, click, yes, programming, must know more. So then I could you could pick what subjects you do in the next semester. And I was like, all right, all the programming ones are stacking up right here, right? Like all the like hardware, deep theory ones. I was like, they're interesting. That's cool. I'll get into I was just like stacked up all the programming ones, and I did those bit by bit. And I was just like, this is the thing. Like, this is like, I don't need to, because I wasn't going to university to get a job. I was just kind of like, I wanted to go deep on something. I wanted to excel at something, and I wanted to like find the thing. Obviously, I'd hope that I'd get a job at the end of it. But then I was like, I know what I want to do now. Like, this is it. And I lived in Wagga Wagga, which is kind of a rural city in New South Wales. And I was like, well, how do you do programming in Wagga Wagga? Like, how do you do that? I didn't know about like the communities, like the development communities. I didn't know about, contracting or anything. I'm just like some random that's like found programming and wants to do it. I'm like, I don't know if I can do C++ in Wagga, but I can. Everyone wants a website. Every business wants a marketing website. And I kind of stumbled into WordPress, the classic. So definitely like a WordPress origin story. Did either of you two kind of like dive into WordPress? Have you gone deep on that?
I don't think I ever. I think I avoided it from a career point of view, but it has. If you're in PHP, it comes across your desk at some point with probably more regularity than any of us really want. So, we had a corporate internet at a previous role that was built on WordPress and corporate intranet, so they then wanted like connections to various bits of functionality. The business's engineering team was largely a .NET shop, so what is this PHP, this horrible untyped glorious mess that was at the time PHP 5, so it wasn't even good PHP yet. Dabbled, but certainly haven't gone in fact recently I've been looking at building a website for my own things, and I've kind of gone to WordPress because it's just completely turnkey, and I'm like, what even is this? So there's a big missing part of my career which for better or worse, I don't have the deep understanding of the loop and
yes, the loop, the page, the title, yeah. I mean, what great function names as well. Like that's like there's actually some like really nice stuff about WordPress. As much as it's so easy to like put it down because it uses all this global stuff. Like there's a lot of like real good niceties about it. But I actually love WordPress. I think WordPress is great if you use it for the right thing. Obviously, there's people out there that bend it to do absolutely insane things. And,
Sam Levy.
Yeah, exactly. And for better or for worse, whatever that ends up looking like. But yeah, I was like, I found someone who was kind of, I was just kind of like tinkering, and this person came in and saw me tinkering when I was working at like a Apple store, and they were like, "Oh, you're building a website?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Cool. Come around to my place on the weekend and let's chat." And we just kind of started the business doing WordPress stuff. And that's where I really just learned to like, because I didn't know programming inside out. I didn't know concepts or patterns or any of that kind of stuff. I just knew that I had to make button red. Like, we want button to be red. And so I'd like hack and slash like as much as I could. And like, I remember doing things like, this is where like everything was jQuery, and like, I remember like, I have to change this thing and I don't know how to do it because I don't know what CSS is. And I remembered like finding something about doing it with jQuery on Stack Overflow. And then I'm like, what is jQuery? And I remember like Googling, what is the difference between JavaScript and jQuery? I keep hearing these two things. I'm thinking they're like disparate things. And I'm like, I just remember that like, it's all kind of this one like web thing. And that was like real hacky slashy stuff, and like I loved that phase of development because I had no rules. It was just get the customer what they want in any possible way without any good patterns or anything. I'm sorry for whoever takes over my websites, which is again Sam. I'm sorry, Sam. I'm sorry for everything you have seen.
There's the golden rule, right? It's not wrong if it works.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not wrong if it works and someone's going to pay you for it.
Yeah. In a business context,
right.
if someone's paying for it, customers are never going to look at your code. And this is something that constantly comes up in online discourse. Is like, God, that's a bad way of doing it, or you shouldn't use this pattern, or you should use that pattern. It's like, as long as it works, as long as the customer is happy with it, and as long as they pay their invoices, most of the time it doesn't matter. And a lot of the academia around programming is just in online discourse. There's, Laravel gets pegged for facades, and it gets, for all of these different things all of the time. And it's cyclical. It comes and it goes. Laravel goes on. All of us keep building Laravel sites, and it doesn't matter because it's serving real business reasons.
I find the state of online discourse on this stuff. I tweeted about it the other day. I got into a little bit of a Twitter argument, which don't get into Twitter argument, kids. It's never fun. Someone was suggesting that in all cases it's a bad idea for you to have multiple databases that do different things. So, for example, like MySQL and then Elasticsearch, and I sort of come down on the side of use the right tool for the job. Like if you want the right feedback, you need to be using the right tool, and that might mean that your infrastructure complexity kind of goes up. But the whole conversation was black or white. It was all like always only use one database or always use 1,000 databases. And I ended up tweeting that the discourse on Twitter is always this black and white thing. It's either right or it's wrong. But the reality is that it's there's a spectrum there. I mean, there are some things that are egregiously a bad idea. Like, don't change the color of a button with jQuery. For no other reason than you're going to get a flash of unstyled content where it's blue and then it turns red, which is going to confuse people. But like, there are definitely some things that are kind of like that we all kind of know. Like, we all know we shouldn't do. Unless we're Sam Levy. that seems to be like a I shouldn't do this, therefore I'm going to definitely do it. But once you kind of have like some level of skill, it doesn't even need to be like a really huge level of skill. Once you get some basic understanding of where the traps are, like I don't think you need to be necessarily worried about. I think people would be more successful if they were worried about whether things were working and whether they were being paid for them, rather than whether or not they're using domain-driven design and event sourcing exactly as it's written in the book. and, you know, dependency injecting all the things and whatever else the sort of right way to program is. I think people would be in a lot better place. Like, not just financially, but also, like, their headspace wouldn't be filled up with so much, like, anxiety over, am I doing the right job? And as Michael says, like, your customers don't see it. You see it, your colleagues see it, and, you know, you've got a good group of people, they'll, like, lift you up and help you get better, as opposed to ridiculing you for doing it wrong. But, yeah, the internet discourse on programming is, like, really tiring and awful. Because there is no right and wrong.
Exactly. We need to be, like, solving problems. And so, like... So let's talk about facades for 1 second. So there's two sides to this coin, which is I don't like facades. I don't like referencing facades in packages. And I remember at one point I got hit by something, or maybe it was just like more static stuff. I can't remember, but I got hit by something and it was annoying in a package. And so then I ended up going, all right, I'm just going to do dependency injection in packages because I hit this thing, but I still use facades in my projects because like it's just super easy there. Like I never like have run into that problem there. So like it's like work on the problems that you have in front of you, and like if something like change because of the problems, don't change because there's this rule that you need to like abide by across the board on everything.
Yeah. And software's immutable, right? Sorry, mutable, I should say. You can, like, if you focus on getting the thing solved first, you can always go back and make it better. Like, refactoring from facades to dependency injection is actually usually not that hard. It's usually not a big deal. So you're focusing, I don't know whether it's, like, just this sort of people procrastinating. Like, is the decision to like do all the things correctly just some hidden form of procrastination because they don't actually know how to solve the problem? Or I don't really know what it is, but the online discourse just drives me crazy. And like something you said earlier about, you know, and it's similar to Michael's story where you've kind of not finished university degrees because you've figured out how you can do programming is one of the only careers that you can do that in, right? Where you can just decide that to hell with academia, I'm going to go cash checks, and worrying about the academic arguments. And nothing against the people who make the academic arguments. They're always very, very smart people and they've always got points in their context, and that's great, that's wonderful. But worrying about all of that stuff is how you become an academic, not how you become someone who drives a Lambo. Like,
yeah, for real. Yeah, it's all contextual, and like the whole like even like because a lot of the time it's like, well, show me the code that's problematic. I know that's like a big thing, but it's not even that. Like, because a code can be problematic depending on the context. Like it's like show me the code and then explain the entire context behind this thing for me to even know if it's a problem or not. And that's when I care whether you're using what. And so 100%. Just like arguing in a vacuum is not fun for anyone.
So to what extent does, like, this is interesting, and it's probably a little bit off topic for the podcast, but to what extent does that discourse feed into how things at Laravel get written? Because, like, Laravel's scrutinized by camps of people who, I think there's less of them now, or I'm seeing less of them now, but there's always this camp of people that Laravel is a toy that's used for small conceptual things and it's not ready for big boy enterprise things, which is news to me because 1.5 million lines of code, very, very big application running on Laravel. It's definitely suitable for enterprise. So to what extent does that discourse feed into making sure that you guys, quote unquote, do it right, or you just not give a shit?
I mean, I definitely wouldn't want to speak on behalf of anyone else, but I know, like, you know, whenever I'm contributing to the framework, I'm just doing what. Like, I guess I kind of, like, know the vibe of the thing. You know, like, people will be like, oh, I don't like tap. And it's like, I know it sounds silly, but, like, tap it's about the vibe of the thing. And, you know, not referencing temporary variables is like, temporary variables aren't intrinsically bad, but it's about the vibe of the thing and, like, how there's, I don't know, there's a whole, like, it's kind of like an ethos and man, I wish I could put it into words. I probably could if I'd thought about it more, but I just like, I know kind of where, I feel like I know where kind of like Taylor's coming from with those kinds of decisions. And so I just kind of like have embraced that to make sure that, like you would with any team member, like Greg, if you and I are working together and we're pairing and I keep doing something, you're like, oh, I don't like it that way. You're like, can we do, let's say you didn't like single line closures for whatever reason, which of course we all love those, but you were just like, I just like fat things I don't have a strong opinion. I'm just going to start writing fat functions, right, rather than short ones. So it's that same thing with Taylor, like contributing to the framework, just like knowing the vibe of the thing and being like, we want to use a tap here, we want to do this. Another thing I've been really liking recently is using, the list function, but you can now just do it with like the array literal syntax. So you're like open square bracket, variable name, close square bracket, equals, and then you have an array. Yeah, and it like backfills into that. I've been loving that for like defining several different variables out of like a list of things to like, again, like co-locate the variable assignment into like one block, into like one thing. And it's like, it could be several different lines, but it's like, it's not messier, and it's got a certain vibe to it and a certain like, here's the thing that's happening that's important. You don't need to read every little line unless you're like really diving into it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that answers your question or if I just went off topic even more.
We sat down as a team last week, I think, or the week before, and we had a similar discussion. We talked about how we want to, now that the team has grown to, we've got 7 people onshore and we've got 5 or 6, I think, offshore that are all contributing to the same code base. It's like, how much of this do we codify now? And how much of it can we codify? Because we don't want to have PR reviews where you're getting sidetracked by nitpicks and optional styling stuff. And it's like, Laravel hint takes you so far. It will do a lot of the work, but a lot of things like I'd use a tap here, or I would or wouldn't use a temporary variable here, or I would do something in one way or another. Like it is contextual, and it's like, you are right. It is a vibe thing in Laravel that is hard. And people said, can you write it down? I said, no, because I don't know until I look at it. Like, would I write this as a short closure or as a long closure? Would I write this, where would I align the variables? Sometimes we're using pest for our test suite, and so we would have like post JSON using the functional syntax in pest. And then if it's just like a smoke test where we're hitting an endpoint, we would say like post JSON, the route, new line, close paren, arrow, assert OK. And that would be like 3 lines, and everything would be chained like that. But if we're doing something a little bit more in depth, where it's a post JSON where we want to assert created and we want to assert the shape of the return JSON, well, the assert created wouldn't go on the same line as the closing paren of the post JSON now. It would go on a new line indented. And it's like, these are kind of things that you cannot really enforce with a code linter. These are kind of things that it is how the code is written in the code base, alignment and all of that kind of stuff. And you can try and do it. And I think you'd spend more time bike shedding on tooling to do it than just knowing like, in these situations we do this, and in these other situations we do this. And like it's hard, and I think
we sort of have a rule that basically says if someone new comes to the project and opens it up, it should look like one person wrote it.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to, and that doesn't mean that you can't go and introduce some new way of doing things, because I think where people have codified coding standards and stuff to the nth degree, you kind of lose the ability to do anything new, or discover some better way of doing stuff. But there's probably been close to 20 people who've contributed to our code base over its life, probably more. But to the best extent we possibly can, it looks like it was written by one person. Now, it doesn't look anything like the code that I'd like to write. It's definitely not my personal style or my personal vibe. But and it's probably not the personal style or personal vibe of anyone on the team, to be honest. It's just some distillation of preferences where we've made a decision to do something. But I think the important part is that it does look like there was one contributor, which was the team, as opposed to this guy's using tabs, this guy's using spaces, this person's using loops and variables, this person's using collections. that just makes it so hard to read and understand what's going on because
we definitely landed on that as like the guiding principle is that if there is any doubt, we would discuss it as a team. No one's gonna have any personal feeling about it. It's like if 7 out of 8 people decide, this is how we want to do it, then that's how the team is going to do it, and that's how we know to do it in future. So that kind of stuff is tricky, but at the end of the day, as you say, the team wrote the code, no individual person wrote it, and so consistency is the key there.
So moving a little bit down on your journey, just to kind of steer it back to what we're talking about, at some point after you decided to build websites for people, and I guess that's how you created your agency, whose client base you eventually handed over to Sam, you then took a bit of a leap into working for a team on a sort of application.
Yeah, absolutely. So I left doing. I kind of went in and out of agency stuff. At one point, I nearly detoured completely into app development as well. So I started getting really into apps and like the build your own app stuff. And then I was like, I even nearly got a job at another framework that builds like app stuff, like React Native and stuff like that before React Native and stuff even existed. So I nearly ended up down that pipe hole, and then I realized, the web is what I want to do. I want to be on the web. I need a back end, and that's when I found Laravel, which I thought would be an important thing to. I needed the back end, and I'm like, I don't think WordPress is the thing. I'll look out for, and I think it was like Laravel 5.1 or 5.2 or something. It was out, and I was like, this is the thing. But yeah, so learnt that, did that. And then, I was doing the agency thing, and I was just like, you know what? Like, I don't know if anything I'm doing is good. I don't know if any of the code I'm writing is good. No one's ever said, Tim, that sucks. Like, you should be doing better. And I'm probably the only developer to say, I really wanted someone to, like, critique my code and tell me how I was doing, right? Like, I wanted some kind of feedback. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to like stop doing this, like run your own business, get to do your own hours thing and like get a job in an office with humans. That'd be crazy. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do that. And again, I'm sorry, Sam, for the code bases that I handed over to you and the terrible things that were done. Handed those over to Sam, and he was lovely enough to take them on for me. And then moved down to Melbourne, got a job at a startup, like a real, what I would call in the best way, like a real scrappy startup. And that kind of took me back to that like hack and slash days where it was just like, we just turn around features in a day, or whatever it was. Like, and everything was just like, let's just go and like try and get things out. And that was really useful when COVID hit and the entire business was a ticketing agency and there's no events anymore. And we had to like pivot the company completely like on a dime and change basically what we did to like keep the company going. And that was really cool. But it just kind of didn't have the same vibe and excitement after that because, there's not so many events during COVID. I don't know if you remember. So I wasn't really looking too much. I was still happy, but I just wasn't feeling it. And then there was this opportunity to come up, and I think it was Jess Archer that actually reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we're looking for someone. Do you have any interest?" And I was like, "Oh, I mean, maybe." And then she put me in touch with, the person, Phil, to like have a chat and we kicked off to that. And then next thing I know, I'm working with Jess. We're on a team together. That was an excellent time. Getting to build that stuff, and I just learned so much from Jess and took on so many things, and we would just pair every day, and so we both kind of like had our own ways of doing things, and I think Jess talked about this a little bit, but like the thing I love about working with Jess is when we argue, when we disagree on something, it's like they're the best days, because like when you just agree on stuff, it's like, oh, we'll do it this way, it's like it's just boring, you're just coding. But when you've I finally found that thing that I was really searching for, which was like someone to not just critique my code, but actually like come on that journey and like, bounce off each other and be like, I want to do it this way. And, the other person be like, I want to do it this way. And then we end up doing it like some other way that none of us had thought of because we were both pulling at each other to try and like find, like to bring us along on that journey. And yeah, I feel like that, just learnt pair programming I realized through that experience was just like, is so fundamentally important to me that I don't think I could work anywhere where I didn't have that opportunity anymore. Do you do much pair programming yourselves? Do your team get into much pair programming? Is there space for that where you work?
Yeah, so we do it a lot.
Fairly common. Oh yeah, go on.
We do it a lot. We experimented with it. I was reading the Extreme Programming by Example book, and I'm like, what, this pair programming thing, that's obviously aware of it for a long time, but never really understood how. The team was fairly resistant to it initially, I think, because introverted developers don't want people looking at their stuff. And not everyone likes being challenged, right? Some people just like, give me a feature to build and I'll build the feature and get out of there.
Yes.
We've found we don't do it nearly to the extent that you ingest to it, but we do find that when there is a big problem that needs to be like cracked open, putting 2 or even 3 or 4 people, so that's getting up into mob programming, which is sort of pair programming taken to another level. You can get to the solution like far faster. I've heard it said, I don't know how accurate this is, all sort of pop psychology nonsense, I guess, but only half your brain is like working on solving the problem. So when you actually have a pair working, you have a whole brain working on the problem, not half a brain working on a problem. And we find it to be really, really useful for taking a problem that might take an individual a week to get done and turning it into a problem that can get done in like 3 or 4 hours because the other person has the missing knowledge that can be used to fill in and get that done. So we do it a bunch. It's certainly not like I think the way Jess explains it to me is you guys are pretty much, or at least at some point, we're basically doing it all the time, like non-stop. We're certainly not at that level.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're a lot the same. I know the majority of the rest of our onshore team now is based in the office, so they do spend a lot of time together. I kind of am off in my own little special projects team that just does the awful, horrible things that we don't really want to divert any other time to. But any time that there's a crossover between myself and the other folks in the team, when things need to be done, there'll be a bit of... This is the thing that we always start with, like the asynchronous messages on Slack. It's like, hey, what about this? And I go, what about this? And it's like, hang on a minute. After 2 or 3 minutes of this back and forth, it's like, let's just jump on a call and let's just work this out. And like, yeah, asynchronous messaging is great, especially when you're remote or whatever. But it's just so much better to be able to jump on a pairing session, whether that please don't use Slack huddles because they're horrible for it. But Tuple is fantastic. You've got the camera, you've got the audio, you've got the screen up in front. You can draw on the screen, you can type on the screen. You can because trying to point at someone else's screen in a huddle is just hopeless. But on Tuple, you can just get your little pencil and just like squiggle and be like, here, this is the thing that I'm talking about. And you can just it is immediately obvious just how impactful and how much quicker you can get stuff done when you are pairing with someone. And we have a lot of freedom to kind of just get stuff done. So there's no business rule that says, nah, it's one person, one thing. We've just split our teams in such a way that they're cross-functional, front-end, back-end people, senior people, junior people, and it's just proving to be a really good way of working. And we're pairing is certainly a thing, especially when we have to involve the offshore team because they're offshore. There's no other way of doing that. They can't just come into the office and sit around a table. So, yeah, it definitely is. Like, if you haven't done it, and I know that Mitchell Davis is doing a lot of stuff with Laramates to kind of make this a more accessible thing. Ben Holman has been doing this pyramid scheme thing, which he's just jumping on and pairing with people, just getting to know people, looking and it helps you as a developer as well, just to be exposed to different code bases, which isn't, available to everyone necessarily, and you can't necessarily share. Like, obviously, I can't jump on a pairing session with Tim and he's going to show me the cool and exciting things that he's working on for Laracon US or anything like that. But, there are, when you're working on bits and pieces, even if you've got an idea for contributing to the framework or something like that, like, there are always people available. Jess has said this before as well, that she's always willing to jump on and go through stuff with you. Like, there are plenty of opportunities out there, especially in a world of like solo developers and freelancers and things like that, to do this kind of stuff. And it's really heartening to see that the community has kind of taken upon itself to launch headlong into this as well, to facilitate it, whether that's how Ben's doing it, or the stuff that Mitchell's working on with like an app that he did it as an experiment of like, how do I build an app with native PHP, but it's also rooted in this, like, I've got the ability to just make friends with people across the country, across the world, and jump on and pair with them. So I really like the pairing dynamic, from a learning and a teaching, and just from like a socializing perspective.
Yeah, it's just such a good way to like level up as well. Like I've never really known like where I am in some arbitrary scale of like good developer, but like all I know is like when I'm pairing, I'm going up that scale like all the time, wherever I am, like I'm just learning stuff from everyone. It's great. And and even if it's just learning things that I don't like, you just learn things about yourself and you're like, cool, didn't like learn like a new technique, but I learned that I didn't like the way they did X, that's good as well. Then you can articulate, more feelings and thoughts. Pairing's the best.
I also find it's a great way to reduce anxiety about the things that you're building, because you've had another set of... It sort of spreads the accountability a little bit. So deploying stuff that I've built by myself is always nerve-wracking. Deploying something where I've had one or two other people actually in the trenches with me on it doesn't make me completely anxiety-free, because it is possible for multiple people to make mistakes or miss things, but you feel like the likelihood of that is far lower. So, wrapping up your journey then, not long after you worked with Jez, both you and Jess decided to, and I think your story's been well told on the Laracon stage last year, if I'm not mistaken. You two decided to leave the place you were working at the same time and chance your arm at an opportunity at Laravel.
Indeed we did, which was, I still don't understand how I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to get to work at Laravel. But yeah, here we are. We shot our shot and it happened, and Taylor was keen and went ahead, and I guess that's how we kind of ended up where we are, where I am. It was a crazy journey, crazy ride. Obviously, there was a lot of things in between. That was kind of the work stuff, but I think one of the things, there's been a few moments coming back to, I'd like to talk about Laracon specifically. Coming back to Laracon, I remember I wrote a few things that kind of like propelled me along the journey, that kind of like I felt as like a tailwind, I guess, like pushing me forward to kind of get to where I was, didn't know was going, but where I got to was, I'd written a blog post on Laravel collections. I was just like, I wanted to contribute. I saw people writing blog posts. I was like, I could do that. I don't know what I've got to write about. And I remember writing a blog post on Laravel collections, and I tweeted it, and I didn't have really any followers, so it didn't really go anywhere. And I remember I was like, you know what, I'm gonna ping some people that I feel like would like enjoy the vibe of this blog post. So I think it was Freek, and I think it was Caleb Porzio. And I remember Caleb and Caleb replied and was like, "This is sick." And I think he like went and retweeted it, and Freek did the same thing. And then I remember like I woke up and I was like, "Oh, people have like read it." I was on Google Analytics and I was like, "There's people like on my blog. What is happening? This is crazy." And then I was like, "Okay, I'm going to write some more." So I started writing more, and then I remember Michael we're in the PHP Australia Slack channel, and he's like, you know, I'm hoping to see a submission for you for Laracon AU next year. I can't even remember what year it is now. And I was like, you know what? I think I might do that. And I was very nervous, but I thought, I've written the blog post, so why can't I just do a talk on it as well? Like it, you know, it's like, it's just this little idea, but maybe there could be a talk in it that people think is interesting, because I was keen on it. Like, it's not a big idea. It's not like some new revolutionary thing. I was just excited by it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to submit a talk. And I was lucky enough to be accepted, and I gave it, and I just had an absolute blast giving that talk. I was so excited. And that, I feel like that was a big tailwind behind me to like get the opportunity to like be a part of the community at Laracon, which was just amazing. But then to actually get to present at Laracon just kind of blew my mind, that I could have the opportunity, and that my little idea could actually fill the space to do a talk, I think was something I really doubted until I did it. Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about this like a lot. Like it doesn't really matter. I mean, I think around that time, collections were getting talked about a lot. Adam was writing an entire book on the subject, but it doesn't necessarily matter. Like if you feel passionate about something, it doesn't matter if other people are also talking about it. Just talk about your experience with it, and like your particular take on it will just pick up. You know, it may not pick up the sort of main line of people who are interested in that thing. I mean, maybe you're lucky and it does, but there'll be people out to the side who didn't get the way that Adam put it, or didn't quite understand it, and then your take on it is you're sort of bringing more people into the fold. And so yeah, the ideas don't even necessarily have to be unique. They're just your unique experience in that particular space, and why you think it's awesome.
Yeah. I think there's so much value in just like seeing, you can feel it, like you can feel when you're in the audience. I know for me, and this is, I guess, where I kind of felt like I could maybe bring that, is like I could feel when people were like really passionate and really cared about what they were talking about. Again, even if it was something that I knew deeply, or I knew a little bit of, or I didn't know anything about, the talks where they were passionate and excited about it was so much more engaging for me than just like deep technical talks that were really serious, you know, or you know, here's like a new product or a new feature or something, and it's like it's just kind of been rattled off. But when those people are excited about whatever it is they're doing, there's just, I don't know. So if you are listening and you have an idea and you are excited about it, please submit to Laracons, because there's like and local meetups and everything. Like, get out there and give talks or write blog posts or share wherever you can, and just be excited. I think you've just got to be excited about the things that you're excited about, which you already are. So you just have to be yourself.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, sure.
100%. Don't worry about the nerves, or I mean, the nerves are going to be there no matter what. People that have been speaking for years and years still get those nerves. They're still sitting in the green room in the lead up to giving their talk on a Laracon stage, fretting over their slides, and oh god, I've got to get out there and present this to, you know, hundreds of people.
A paper bag.
all of that is going to happen no matter how many times you present. But until you put yourself out there to do it, you won't have done it. So it's all just like fear that you've built up in your head, that like the adrenaline rush. Greg knows this. Last year when you got on, like when you got off stage, the adrenaline that was pumping, and like just the thrill of having done it and finished it and putting yourself out there. Like, no one can take that away from you. Doesn't matter what happens when you're on the stage. This is an achievement for yourself to get out there and do it. And like, let people decide. You know, we've said this several times on this podcast, that the Laravel community is one of the most welcoming in terms of like Laracon audience, and they want you to succeed, and they want you to present your ideas and have fun up there. And so that's what they will do when you get yourself on stage. No one's paying $600 to come and heckle you. No one's paying money to do that. And like, people that do that are doing it anonymously, and they're not like, if you can't put your name to what you're saying, then the opinion doesn't matter anyway.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
and like it's scary to put yourself out there. And to like, I remember I was like, is this weird? Like, is this a weird thing to do, to just like message Caleb on Twitter and be like, read this post, you don't know who I am, you know, like here's a random, like, you know, I've just slid into his DMs, and he was lovely, and he said it was great, and like, but I was scared that he, you know, it was just going to be no reply, or at worst it was going to be, please stop messaging me, like leave me alone, you know. But like the community is so lovely, and like don't feel you need to kind of embrace that to some degree, and like put yourself out there, but not just put yourself out there, like reach out to people and like specifically share stuff with people that you think would also be excited, because you know Twitter can often feel like you're just screaming into a void, and like you're just like, oh, I've got these interesting things to say and no one's listening, and you know sometimes that is the case. But if you've got something, like, you know, if you've written a blog post you're really proud about and you know that someone else is excited about that, ping them and be like, yo, check this out. I remember I pinged Matt Stauffer, I think, on some like deployment blog post I did that I was excited about because he was talking about it, and I was stoked when he was like, that was a cool read. You know, that's all he said, but I was just like, yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, thanks,
but
Matt.
Also, look, the absolute, you kind of touched on it, the worst thing that's going to happen, the absolute worst thing that's going to happen is that they're not going to respond to you. So what? Like, it's like, that's all you lose, is you take the 30 seconds it takes to send someone a message and they don't read your thing. Okay, send it to someone else. Like,
someone else.
I think we could get all up in our head about, you know, what if they don't like me? What if they don't like it? Like,
yeah.
There's someone else out there. There's, you know, just do stuff. And if you're so crippled by the anxiety of people not responding to you, then you're not going to be able to like reap the rewards for doing this work. You're just going to do what I've done for 20 years and toil in obscurity.
Big time. Circling back to what you kind of mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. So now Jess and I are working on the same team. We're slowly growing the Australian team at Laravel in Australia, which is really exciting. And Jess has been promoted to team lead, which has been fantastic. So Jess is an absolute gun. And actually, when she was on the show, she said, I think she said like something like, oh, it's maybe a little bit awkward. So for the record, I just want to be very, very clear that it is in no way awkward. It's actually freaking awesome. Jess is absolutely amazing, and she has like quite clearly been just an absolutely amazing team lead in the short period of time that she's even been doing it. It's been really great, and it's just going to continue to get even better as we grow our team. I'm really excited about the stuff that we're building. I would, of course, love to just tell everyone the kind of stuff that we're doing at the moment, but there's some really great stuff and exciting stuff that we're working on that I think everyone's going to get a real kick out of. So,
nice. Yeah, I think you know, sometimes as a company like that grows, sometimes a lot of that stuff is formality. Like somebody has to, and like your working relationship probably hasn't changed in the slightest, other than, oh yeah, we defer to Jess in stuff, but like Jess is going to defer to you in things that you're knowledgeable of. And like ultimately what this means is that Jess is going to have to go and have like update meetings with
exactly
or something. It doesn't really change your working dynamic. She's still on the code, you're still pairing, and like and this is a good thing for, you know, you, because it means you're now going to be exposed to more people as the APAC team grows. You know, Ryuta's has come on, and like, there you go. Yuta, Jess did tell us how to say it properly. I'm pretty sure that like you don't pronounce the R. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And it's got a bit of like an L at the beginning, Luta.
Right.
Luta. And I'm I'm very sorry if I also mispronounced that.
We
trying to
do try. We do try. Fantastic. Well, I think. Sorry. Finish your thought.
No. I was finished.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Great to have you on, Tim. I said to Greg earlier today, it's nice to have a bit of continuity through these different episodes. You know, we had Jess earlier on, we had Samuel. I said, well, we've got to get Tim because there's continuity. There's a thread through those three people. You know, it's showing that the ripples are not just individual, but they're like bouncing between people for different reasons. You know, Jess coming to work with you going to work with you going to work with Jess, Jess going to work with you, landing in Laravel, all of this stuff, like you don't know where those ripples are going to land, which is the greatest, I think, thing of it. Eventually, you end up making waves somewhere. For a lot of us, that's going to be at Laracon this year. I hope to see you there. I see that we've got several. Joe Tannenbaum is coming to speak this year. We announced that last week. Jess is going to be in attendance. We've got a couple other Laravel team members that are making the trip as well, which is exciting. So we're going to, have some of the inside scoop. We're going to have all kinds of different ideas, new people, old people, people that have been around the traps but never really public. So I'm really excited about the lineup that we've put together this year. I'm excited about all the things that we're going to do this year, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to mingle with people, which was kind of lost last year. Because by the time I came out in all of the breaks, everyone had dispersed into the wind because we didn't have the room for it. So I'm excited to have the opportunity to mingle with people in the breaks and not just be like running backwards and forwards between speakers on stage. So if you haven't, early bird tickets for that are on sale until the end of August, so 6 weeks or so now. I don't expect that they will actually still be available until the end of August, though. I think we'll probably sell them out before then, which is fantastic. So
get on it, people. If you're planning to get a ticket, go get the ticket like right now. Pause this episode, go buy the ticket, come back for the last 2 minutes.
Pester your bosses, get your budgets in line, make it happen.
Best Laracon in the world. It's the only one I've ever been to, so but
there's something about the Laracon AU, like it's I don't know, it's special to me. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I think there's a degree of intimacy there that probably gets lost at the bigger ones.
I think so. Yep.
We try and hone that. I've said to Taylor a few times, I'm like, I don't see how you do it. Like I went to New York in 2019 when they were at the PlayStation Theater when it was like 900 people. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, this is not a good thing. Like, anyone can watch the videos anytime, but you cannot socialize with those people. You can't make the connections. And I'm like, I don't like, we'll be 395, 400 this year. I don't even want to go bigger than that, if I'm perfectly honest. If we can run a nice event for that number of people, and like beyond that number, it's hard to do anything social. Like the venue that we're doing After Dark at this year is like, that is it. Beyond that, I don't know where I take more than 400 people to a social event. So, yeah, hope to see everyone there. And on that note, this has been episode 14 of the Ripples podcast. You can find us on Twitter, on YouTube at Ripples FM. You can find Tim at Tim MacDonald 87 on Twitter. You can find Greg at Greg Skirman, and I am at Michael Dorinda. And until next time, I will see you all.
See ya.
Bye.